David, that sounds ridiculous. Come on. You've got a
Well,
worldwide
we have to figure out what
pandemic.
that level is.
Caused this. But at whose risk? Yours or mine? You. It's okay if you die, right?
Okay, today we're going to be going over some Dave Rubin content because it's juicy like always. It is very delightful. We're going to start with a really good clip I found on Twitter, and then we'll get into one of his more recent YouTube videos about the inauguration.
This is totally anecdotal, but I keep seeing that they're saying like something like all, not all of them, but we're seeing like 90% of the hospital beds in California are overtaken. SoCal and LA, all the hospital beds are overtaken. There's two hospitals that I live about 10 minutes between, and I drove by both yesterday, and they're pretty much empty. I did not go in and check every bed, so I'm just telling you what I can see on the outside, which are pretty much empty parking lots and the lines for COVID testing that are completely empty and everything else. So it's just like, what's going on here? What's going on here? I don't know. I'm just asking you the question.
Well, I think I know what's going on, Dave. I love how he's just like, I'm just probing, just asking questions about COVID-19 as if he hasn't been pumping out content that borderlines the conspiratorial for COVID-19. But I think we can run through as to what's going on, right? So generally, when people go to hospital and they're in there for serious reasons, like COVID, and potentially they're on a ventilator, they didn't drive themselves there, right? So the parking lot's probably empty because someone else drove them there, and then that other person has a life to live, right? So they leave and they take their car. So they drop them off there. And then I'm sure there are ones who went in like an emergency vehicle and got there that way as well. And then you have also the fact that you have certain hospitals that aren't as overwhelmed as other hospitals. So certain hospitals aren't going to have, packed COVID floors and nurses and doctors working overtime and, double the staff. And then you have the hospitals that are doing that. But again, most people don't drive themselves to the hospital. And even if they do, if they're there for extended periods of time, someone in many cases, I'm sure, comes and picks their car up. You're just going to leave your car. You have no loved ones at all, and they're just going to leave your car in the hospital parking lot for days that turn into weeks, that turn into an eternity if you die. Someone's going to come take your car. But again, this is Dave Rubin, so what do we expect? Let's get into his inauguration video where he goes over Joe Biden's inauguration. Because
maybe everybody calms down a little bit. I hope that there's some reaching across the aisle. I hope that there's some healing. And I know we're saying a lot of those words, right? Everyone's saying those words today, or the media is saying those words because they got what they wanted, or the Biden folks are saying those words because they got what they wanted. But of course, we know if it was the reverse, they would be saying burn it all down. They would be saying the dictator won. By the way, the dictator got in his helicopter and I think went to his hotel in Florida. They toppled the dictator. He's, sitting at Mar-a-Lago right now eating shrimp cocktail.
Oh, this is the first juicy one. He wasn't a dictator, but he wished that he could have been a dictator. He wanted to be an authoritarian leader of the United States of America. That is clear as day, especially now we have more information. Okay, so Trump's not a dictator. Right, but he wished he could have been one. We have a lot to go off of as to why one would think that, and they could back it up. So let's just focus on the last month or so, month and a half, of what he did after he lost the election. Because what's going to show you more that he didn't give a shit about democracy, and he was trying everything that he could do to maintain power and kill democracy in this country. Nothing's going to show us that more clearly than the actions that he took in the last 2 months or so before he actually had to fly away on his helicopter, because this country's, our norms, our laws, our institutions ended up holding in the end. But it's not that he didn't pressure test the hell out of them. So we all know about him inciting the riot. Obviously, he incited the riot. We don't need to really go into deep about that. I'm pretty sure anyone that is, rationally thinking understands that he incited the riot. But not only did he incite the riot, organizers of the Trump rally had been on campaign's payroll. So, former President Donald Trump's campaign, let's just take it in a second. Former President Donald Trump campaign paid more than $2.7 million over the 2 years to individuals and firms that organized the January 6th rally that led to rioters storming the U.S. Capitol. So, the payments, which span from Trump's re-election campaign, show an ongoing financial relationship between the rally's organizers and Trump's political operation. They were all made through November 23rd, and the most recent date covered by Federal Election Commission filings, which is even before the rally was publicly announced. So, $2.7 million of the Trump campaign was funneled to individuals and firms to help organize the rally, for which then it was organized and going on. He actually got up in front of the microphone and incited them to storm the Capitol to forcefully interrupt the peaceful transition of power. That seems pretty dictatorial to me. Just throwing it out there. And then, of course, the information just doesn't stop coming in. I'm sure we'll learn so much as the months go on. Here's another one. Trump pressured the Justice Department to go directly to Supreme Court to overturn the election results. Man, that seems pretty dictatorial to me. Just because he failed doesn't mean that he didn't long to be a dictator. Okay, he failed at doing it, but he tried. He damn sure tried. Okay? In the last 2 weeks of office, former President Donald Trump considered moving to replace the acting attorney general with another official ready to pursue unsubstantiated claims of election fraud. And he pushed the Justice Department to ask the Supreme Court to invalidate President Biden's victory, people familiar with the matter said. Those efforts failed due to pushback from his own appointees in the Justice Department, who refused to file what they viewed as legally baseless lawsuit in the Supreme Court. Later, other senior department officials threatened to resign en masse should Mr. Trump fire then-attacking Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, according to several people familiar with the discussions. So this is a long, lengthy article from the Wall Street Journal, but he incited a riot. But not only did he incite the riot, his campaign funds were directly and indirectly used to organize the riot that he then incited, called them special people and patriots, was the one who was the reason that the National Guard wasn't called in sooner during the insurrection, made up fake claims about election fraud, pushed them in over 4 dozen different court cases and got them all thrown out or lost. Then behind the scenes was pressuring the DOJ and was thinking about replacing the acting attorney general with someone new who would push his baseless claims all the way to the Supreme Court. If you don't think that is authoritarian and dictatorial, I'm not sure what is, Dave.
There were 2 other people and I was standing. And then at some point, Trump Jr. got pulled away and I had about 3 minutes with Trump alone. And I started telling him, this was just when Bloomberg had just either announced that he was getting into the race, seems like another lifetime ago, or he was just about to get out of the race. Just about to get in, or he had just gotten in. I forget which one. And I said to Trump, I was like, Mr. President, I think that Bloomberg is really just getting in because Biden's the front runner now, and they know he's going to get all the heat, and they don't want him to get the heat because he can't deal with it on the podium during the debates. So they just need Bloomberg there for a little while so the media can focus on him, that way they can drag Biden to the finish line. Now, I fully believe that is exactly what happened. The Bloomberg campaign was a total joke. The media was obsessed with it for those 2 debates, remember, and everybody was attacking Bloomberg the entire time, even though Biden was the front runner. I get it, this is sort of like insider baseball politics stuff. But anyway, I say this to Trump, And he's like, that is kind of interesting. And then he put his hand across the table, and Melania's hand was on the table, and he touched her hand, and he said, honey, what do you think about this? And then I told her what I said. He had me repeat it to her, and I told her, and then he looks at the two of us. He kind of looks at her and looks at me. He's like, that's interesting, but I think it's just because he hates me. Okay, so it's sort of like a perfect Trump story. But I tell you that not because of the story or to tell you that I think I was right about the Bloomberg thing, more so that he touched her hand and called her honey, and it was just sort of a pleasant moment. And the reason I'm even mentioning that is because maybe all of the people in media and politics are not as big cartoonish clowns as we purport them to be. I think that is quite possible. And I'll do my best to going forward not make them all out to be that thing. Anyway, let's talk about...
I'm going to have to disagree with you again there, Dave. I really do think Donald Trump is as big as a clown as we all think he is. He's shown it to us over 4 years. If you don't see it at this point, you're just willfully being blind to it. There's really no, especially doing what you do, being as, deep into the political climate as you are, there's no chance that you can't see it unless you're just willfully don't want to see it. The man's a clown.
Those lights that are just shooting out from the Lincoln Memorial along the reflecting pool, it's like almost extensions of Joe Biden's arms embracing America. It was a moment where the new president came to town and sort of convened the country in this moment of remembrance, outstretching his arms.
Extensions of Joe Biden's arms, hugging, embracing, fondling America. Can you feel the love? Oh, God. I mean, I just thought that clip, there's a gajillion of those. Trust me, I could show you a gajillion. That's a lot. That's a big number.
Okay, I think I'll have to agree with Dave right here on this one. That was just a terrible, terrible little segment there on CNN. But I mean, CNN is not like the best place to get your news, and we know, they definitely have their leanings, they have their biases, and that was just, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad.
There was the Capitol lawn. Not a lot of people there. I get it. Social distancing, the pandemic, although nobody's talking about the pandemic anymore. Although my governor here in California,
what is he talking about? No one's talking about the pandemic. He just said everyone is social distancing at the inauguration, and then he says no one's talking about the pandemic, and then he shows a giant photo of an extremely light crowd, and everyone's spaced out, social distancing because of the pandemic. No one's talking about it, though. No one's talking about it, but we're just still taking all the precautions and actions as if it's actually happening because, well, it is actually happening.
So Trump did a lot via executive action. I think a little less than Obama, but somebody can fact check me on that. Can we check that? Executive actions of the last 4 or 5 presidents. Let's just see. But the idea that presidents do so much by executive action is very dangerous. And by the way, at some level, you can't blame them because Congress is so corroded and stiff and calcified, and nothing good really can come of it. And these people are not really working for us; they're just working so that they can become lobbyists later and everything else. All right, we're going to get some numbers on the executive actions in a sec. But in any event, what you don't want is the guy that's in charge to just do what he wants through the stroke of a pen so it can be reversed by the next guy. Like that's not a good way to govern, and it's a deeply dangerous way to govern, actually. Okay, so I got some numbers here. So Bill Clinton did 364 executive actions. George W. Bush did 291, so a little bit less. Obama did 276, a little bit less, and Trump actually did the least, 218. Now, I suspect it'll be interesting to see what Biden will be able to do because, he's got more power now because of what's going on in the Congress and Senate. We'll see if he's able to just push more stuff through legislatively, or they just won't care and they'll just be like, all right, just do it with the stroke of a pen. And one of the things that I am worried about is
I'm not sure just directly going to the number of executive orders tells you much about, who's really abusing their power and who's not. It also could tell you who controlled Congress and who didn't, right? So if Like now, the Democrats have the Senate and the House. So Biden's first 2 years, potentially there could be far fewer executive orders because he just may not need to do them. They may be able to get the things done they want done going through the normal procedures through Congress. So just, flat out saying like, oh, he, so-and-so did 400, so-and-so did 250, 260. It doesn't tell you much. There's a lot of reasons as to why someone could have done more and someone could have done less. I think we all can agree that, being in a pendulum shift back and forth between presidents and their executive orders doesn't seem like a great way to govern. I think we all can agree on that. But at the same time, there are some absolutely terrible executive orders that, your predecessor may have signed into existence, and then you have to come along and be able to quickly undo them because some of them are so detrimental, particularly ones like some of the environmental ones that Trump did. That if you had to actually then go through the proper procedures of getting that overturned, well, think about all the damage and harm that could be going on in the world and in the country while going through the normal procedures of trying to get that undone. So it's not, EOs aren't the best. I completely agree on that. But it's not as easy as cut and dry as so-and-so did 260 and so-and-so did 160. Therefore, the person that did 160 EOs is better.
Because you can feel right now a major move, obviously big tech's banning a whole bunch of people. I just saw before I got on here that there seems to be another Twitter purge of some fairly big accounts today. That's obviously not surprising at all, and everyone's just going to complain about it and not do anything about it. And our congressmen, they can have some meetings every now and again, and they can get on C-SPAN for, you, Jack, you're a bad, bad man there. And it's like, okay, well, you didn't do anything about it, so whatever, it is what it is. But you can...
What can we do about it, Dave? I mean, your side is the side that's always going on and on about, private companies having the freedoms to choose, who they allow to platform, who they sell to, how they run their business. And then we also, where the left is also like, well, maybe we should, actually enforce some of our antitrust laws and not let these huge conglomerate companies of any kind, tech or any, get as big as they are and give them too much power and basically put them in a monopoly or oligopoly. And then they get to a point where if Twitter bans you and then Facebook bans you, you're kind of screwed, right? Where else are you going to go? Well, if we were actually doing some of the regulation that we already have on the books and enforcing some of these antitrust laws, we could possibly alleviate this because Twitter and Facebook might not be the only actors in this realm, in the big tech realm, and conversation and platforms and getting your ideas out and social media. So at this point, there's nothing we can do. And Twitter has the freedom and the right to, if you break their terms of service, you're gone. I mean, Donald Trump, he once threatened nuclear war on Twitter. He threatened the Ayatollah with war on Twitter. Now, coming from just any old schmuck, that might not matter, but coming from the President of the United States who actually has the resources and the means to go to war, that's a pretty big deal. He then said, to hell with due process, and tweeted out, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That's a bit of alarming coming from the president. Those seem like terms of service violations to me. They should have banned them long ago. Now, Twitter doesn't get any bit of praise because, they banned him in the midnight hour. But to say that he doesn't deserve to be banned is just ludicrous. Of course he does. He's broken their terms of service multiple times. We can have a bigger, larger, overarching discussion on whether or not Twitter has too much power in that regards. Sure, we can have that discussion. And we can have the discussion about using the laws we currently have to rein in some of these huge corporations that have too much power in their markets. But when it comes to in the past, when we've tried to done this, you guys, your side doesn't want to have that conversation.
So that they'll drop channels like OANN or Newsmax or whatever it might be. does not matter what they're saying on those channels, as long as they're not, fermenting violence, direct calls to violence or breaking the laws of the United States. They're allowed to have counter opinions. They're allowed to have political thought that is different than mainstream political thought. And the irony
about this is that he's saying that these companies like OAN and Newsmax are allowed to have dissenting opinions and they're allowed to express them. They are. They're private companies. But then 2 minutes ago, he's complaining that Twitter shouldn't be allowed to just boot off people who break their terms of service. But wait, that's a private company exercising their free speech rights to and their private rights to not have this person on their platform. So how is he arguing both sides of this coin? It literally within 2.5 minutes of each other. Well, I figured in honor of Larry King passing away a few days ago, this is a juicy clip that we have to see.
But we have to decide what level of sickness are we willing to live with, so to speak, to move ahead and open the country, because I don't know how much longer we can do this.
David, that sounds ridiculous. Come on. You've got a
worldwide we have to figure out what that level is.
Caused this. But at whose risk? Yours or mine? It's okay if you die, right?